Lieutenant Governor is here. Glad that she's able to make it. And I know Aaron's trying to get in from the coming in from the car. He was coming from one of his meetings. I can't even keep up. So I'm going to welcome you today to the Continuum January 2023. I cannot believe it. Or 2024, excuse me. I don't even know what year it is. What I was going to say is 3 years ago is when we actually started this thing. And it is just hard to believe. And I'm so grateful for your participation and commitment to this, and really charging us with or challenging us really to really collaborate and elevate voices and talk to folks in Kentucky and move towards improvement. And I am really overwhelmed and grateful for what you all have done. People ask us about the P20 Council all the time. They ask us about the Continuum, and I said, make it make sense. We are just collaborative people. We believe in a common goal of improving the pipeline for our students, and it's only going to happen if we work together. And so it's because of you. So thank you so much. I'm actually going to go on and let Dr. Thompson kick us off, and then we'll hear from our co-leads and we'll get our day started. So good afternoon, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, folks. It is a busy time. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm getting ready to go over. I hope I can finish this meeting. I have to go over and meet with some representatives as soon as I can this afternoon on some bills that are important, at least to us in higher education and K-12. I'm just going to say, wish me luck, please. We need all that. I do want to once again, thank you all for attending this meeting. I'm very proud of this group. I'm very proud of the Commonwealth Education Continuum. Our P20 approach is one that's not only inclusive and holistic, it's one with some teeth that if we actually decide to bite, and we have been, we're going to really start eating this apple, if you want to call it that. You know, the idea that we are at a point in time where it means more than ever to have a strong P20, not just process, but an effort, but also outcomes. It's important for us to have early childhood that matters, that is not expensive. It's important for us to have a P12 whole system that really gets us to a point where students are not only ready for post-secondary, but working with higher ed, being able to get them some affordable credits before they get into higher ed. And all those things matter for Kentucky and our workforce. It's important that we have a diverse workforce because our workforce people are telling us this. It's important that we do what we do in the positions that we serve to do what we can in order to do our part in helping people to understand that no matter where they're at in our circles. And before I end this conversation here in a second and turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to charge you all with some of our some assistance in making us helping us to do that. I do want to report that according to the National Student Clearinghouse, which is that national group that looks at all states and what they're doing on enrollment in and out of state, has listed Kentucky as leading year over year in enrollment gains. We're proud of that. Some people are going to say, well, they're doing a sampling. Well, they are, but they're sampling apples to apples. And as Jenny Sawyer knows, that when they take this is after they had drop time and they look at the enrollments then. There's some things that happen in enrollment for those who've been on the college campus for a while between after add drop and return to Title IV. So numbers change a little bit. And what we do here at CPE, we collect those numbers. And so the numbers may be a little different, but they're still telling the same story. Kentucky has done a whole lot. And we've done this with a holistic effort. And I'm proud of the effort we've done with this group in making some of that happen. The overall gains 5.6% increase according to National Student Clearinghouse. That's compared to other states. Almost a full percentage point. Well, actually, I think it's a little over than the next state in line. We're also ranked second nationally for undergraduate growth enrollment at 5.5 and fourth for the graduate enrollment. And I appreciate the governor doing a press conference around this. And Lieutenant Governor, I know you were engaged in this, that this is what our state needs to know, that in fact, Kentucky, we're doing the things that are needing to be done to exactly exemplify how we are doing this effort together. I'm incredibly proud of our accomplishments. I'm going to brag a little bit more here. Year over year, in the last 4 years since 2017, when we've been measuring, we've reduced student debt by about 4,500 or so approximately. And that's taken about what, $1,500 a year out of student debt, if you want to look at it that way. Obviously, you can't express data exactly in that manner, but that's basically the story's telling us. We're proud of that. And we've done that once again about making higher education affordable. Also proud to know that, year over year, we're number 2 in completions of gains. Obviously, we're 4.3 million states, so it's not compared populations to populations as far as numbers go, but it is comparing proportions and percentages based year over year. And so since COVID, we've rebounded for this state faster than other states, if not the fastest. And that, to me, is exactly what this education continuum is trying to do, because we know that it's going to take at least by 2030, 63% of our population with a post-secondary credential that matters right now. But we know that in the future, to build the thriving economy, it's going to take about 90% of the jobs will require something along that line. So we're happy with that. The pipeline is what we have to work on even deeper, Commissioner Kenny, and I know that we're settled in to doing that. That's why I want to really be able to have the kind of discussions you all are bringing to the table. Now, another little brag point, as CPE has chosen my Complete College America, who represents states, all 50 states, actually I think 48 out of 50 states, that look at a variety of things, what states are doing, what institutions are doing to increase their completions, their college completions, and innovative strategies that they've measured to see how they're doing it, especially around issues of gap closing and student success as a whole. Proud to say Council on Post-Secondary Education was chosen as the most innovative agency in the nation this past year, and I'm proud of that. That's a brag point, true enough, but that comes with the work that you all are doing and others are doing here. It's surely not saying anything about me directly, but it is about a whole lot of people doing the work. Now, before I turn it over to a Lieutenant Governor, I do want to say we're in a budget session, and we need to be advocating for budgets for all of education. We need to be coming to the table, not in silos, but in tandem, saying it takes budgets from early childhood through post-secondary to do what we need to do in Kentucky. I ask you to speak up. Just don't speak up for K-12, speak up for higher ed. Don't just speak up for K-12, speak up for early childhood. Don't just speak up for early childhood, speak up for higher ed. It's all of us. And that's what this group represents. We also have bills out there that could impede or could help our educational system. Look at those, use your voice. And it is important. We have a lot of good colleagues out there in the legislature that's really trying to do what we need to do to move higher ed toward that sustainable economy. And I appreciate it. We have several of those, or a couple of those who's on this ed continuum, and I'm proud of the work they're doing and proud to work with them. And so it's our job to work with them as much as we possibly can to get us there. With that in mind, Lieutenant Governor, hopefully I didn't steal any of your thunder. I did probably go off the script a little bit to talk about the things that I think that are pressing, at least, but I also want to thank each of you once again, very much so, in this new year for doing what you're doing and for being a part of this, for the commitment. We've had successes already, and I want you to celebrate those, but I want us to double down to see if we can get far more of those as we go into the future. Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. And we didn't even practice this, but you gave me the best segue. So thank you very much. I appreciate that, because I'm going to talk a little bit about the budget. So good afternoon, everybody. I cannot agree more with Dr. Thompson's advice, and want to reiterate the importance of your voice. You all have your own spheres of influence, but together we represent the entire education continuum in Kentucky. And there's power in that. And there's power in staying united, and speaking the same language, which is the whole reason that the Continuum exists. And so I can't think of a better time to use that collective voice than in a budget year. So let me give you a few examples across the continuum of some things that we are looking at. In the governor's budget, he included $172 million to provide universal pre-K for every 4-year-old in Kentucky. He also included additional funding to support childcare centers. And this is important because if there is a community that is a childcare desert, and we have several of those, universal pre-K provides an option that didn't exist previously. If there are childcare centers in the community, this helps to open up more slots by having 4-year-olds in universal pre-K for those childcare centers, which is why we included that additional funding for childcare centers to help transition that way. And unfortunately, in the House budget, that funding was not included. It was taken out. And I think we all know the key to the workforce today, to kindergarten readiness tomorrow, to 3rd grade literacy rates, to 8th grade math scores, to graduation rates, to post-secondary readiness, to workforce success, hinges on the foundation that is universal pre-K. And so it may be an initial investment of $172 million, but I think we would all agree that the dividends of that return are invaluable. So that's one way you can use your voice on this continuum. The governor's education budget was $1.1 billion in total, the biggest education budget we've ever seen. And one of the things that he did in K-12 was he obviously included funding for teacher raises, 11% across the board for every single adult in the building, because it doesn't matter if you are the cook, the custodian, or the chemistry teacher. You're part of the difference that we need to make in our kids' lives. He also included, and I think this is critically important, full funding for transportation. That is a law that is required. It's required by law to fully fund transportation, and it has not been done for decades. So it becomes really difficult for superintendents to provide raises to their employees when they're having to fill gaps everywhere else because the funding is not whole and available. So there's your K-12 perspective. In higher education, the governor's budget increased the base funding for higher education up to 8%. And in the House budget, they actually took that down to 4%. So they cut that in half. And then let me go back to K-12. In the House budget, transportation was not fully funded. There were no raises for teachers. And so the challenge here is communicating the need that universal pre-K, K-12, and higher education have, and what's at stake for the future of Kentucky's economy, because we know that's in our classrooms today. So in this budget session, it's really important that we focus on making sure that all of our education entities have the resources they need to do what we need them to do, right? So those are just a few examples. If you would like more, I have a ton. So you just reach out and let me know, and I'll help arm you with whatever facts and data and funding information that you need. But those are just a few examples of the desperate need of this continuum to use its collective voice to advocate for Kentucky's kids. And so I know I can depend on all of you to do that. I know this is none of your first rodeos. And so any way that we can be of help with information, please let us know. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Commissioner Robin Kinney.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Coleman. It's a pleasure to see you online. I think we are just so appreciative that we have the Lieutenant Governor as one of our many voices. She is very, very knowledgeable about the budget as well, and knowing the practical implications when something is omitted. and what that means in the educational space that we're all striving to improve. And so I, along with the Lieutenant Governor and Aaron Thompson, of course, thank you for your interest in this space with us and the ability for us to use our voices together to really elevate our cause. I, like Aaron, have been very, very busy working with the General Assembly, and I think he said it really well. There's a lot of legislation that is being proposed that can either impede our efforts or can help our efforts. And in the public education space, we are here to make sure that we can provide opportunity and access to all children. It's really important to us that we're focusing on all children and opportunity and access for each and every one of them. And so, like the Lieutenant Governor and Aaron, I encourage you to review bills alongside us. If you have any questions about the bills that have been proposed at this point in time or come up during the session, that we can help you on the perspective from the Kentucky Department of Education, we are happy to talk with you at any time and again provide you the background information you need to feel comfortable in being an advocate in a space that may not be as detailed that you work in, but of course you're supportive of. I was really happy after the November meeting of our convening. It was my first meeting with this group, and to see the numbers and the diversity of people around the table, really with all with this common goal of making sure that our students are successful in life and in their career and employment. And so it was a pleasure to be introduced to this group in November, and the different lenses that you bring to the table toward this common good. As members, your voice and your perspective really matter. And I was really happy. We had a meeting earlier today. Amanda was sharing some folks from CPE and from KDE got together working on a common issue. And I think the Continuum has helped us feel very comfortable in being in that space together, working toward that common goal. Sometimes I feel after being in state government as long as I have, it really does take the right people in the right place at the right time. And I feel this group has that right now. I think we've broken down some of our barriers and some of the silos that maybe we traditionally work in. And this gives us a safe space to bring some of those things forward. So I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with each of you. And although CPE and KD were the primary attendees at our meeting this morning, I heard lots of conversation about, well, let's don't forget workforce. And let's don't forget about other people that aren't in the room with us right now that we need to reach out to continue this conversation. So it was a very encouraging and uplifting meeting. I also have the privilege today to take a moment to introduce our newest members. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to Diane Wood. Diane is on the call with us today. She is serving as Dr. Robinson, who is our chair of the Kentucky Board of Education. She is serving as her proxy to the Commonwealth Education Continuum. Diane she is a lifelong educator, and I know that you will really enjoy getting to know her as I have gotten to know her in the short time that she's been on the Kentucky Board of Education. She's been a teacher, she's been a principal, she's been a superintendent, she's worked with post-secondary, and she comes with a valuable insight and perspective and asks really good questions. So I'm really glad that Diane is joining us in this capacity. I also would like to give a warm welcome to Lynn Baker. I hope Lynn is on the call today, the Interim Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Early Childhood. So welcome to Lynn as well. We're thrilled to have both of you join the Commonwealth Education Continuum. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to help us get our meeting started. Thank you for the time to chat with you this afternoon.
Great. Thank you, all three of our co-leads. And again, thank you guys for being here. Welcome to our new members. We'd love to do a little baptism by fire and say, jump right in with us. And we're glad that you're here. So let's go on and jump into looking at our agenda for today. When we got together in November, we had batted around a lot of ideas of where we want to take the continuum in 2024. And we looked at it through a lens from preschool all the way into workforce. And so today we're going to follow up with that. So in a moment, we're going to give you feedback. We had a group, an ad hoc group who like to be wordsmiths, or who we asked those who had shown an interest to share some of the revisions. So we're going to share that with you today. We're going to go through the areas some of you all participated in our survey to kind of help narrow down some of the topics. Some are still very broad that you'll see that we can go different places with it, but you'll be able to talk about it a little bit more and then actually put your vote in to help us prioritize further, to help us narrow what our focus is for the continuum for this upcoming year plus. And then we're just going to talk about where we're going, the progress, and then the role, the membership role. And really, that's kind of already been discussed with our three co-leads. You are important. Your voice and your influence and your collaboration in the folks that you represent, your role group, is really, really important because you bring a different perspective to the table for us to consider as we're making thoughtful decisions, strategic decisions. So I'm excited to share with you to get us going is that we had asked in November for the life outcomes update. So if you all remember, if you have been with us since the get-go, KY Stats has probably, it's my most favorite report because I'm a data nerd, not as cool as them, but I am very nerd-like over this one, that we looked at the 2019 report and we looked at 2012 high school graduates 7 years after they graduated high school, because nobody has a direct path on anything. Life happens in many different ways. And that's why I love this report. So I did request, and Matt Berry's on the call and our data team's on the call, and I'm so grateful. I requested an update to this report, and KY Stats delivered, as they always do. Talk about a great partnership. They're fantastic to work with. And so you can see that this is the 2022, so it's a 2015 graduates. So if you think about it, 3 years later, from the 2012 graduates to the 2015 graduates, 7 years later. So in 2022, where are they now? And so, of course, I took, and as I know you are going to want to do the same, and I would highly recommend it. This report, for those of you who've seen this for the first time, shows that 7 years after their high school graduation, based on all the multitude of data points that KY Stats has, where was their attainment 7 years later? So as you can see in this graphic, it shows that there were a total of 44,032 graduates in 2015 in the Kentucky high schools. You can see 11,398 high school only. You have 18,115 with some college. They have credit, but they do not have a credential, a certificate, or a degree of any type. And you can read it along. A little over 1,500 who had earned a credential or a certificate, or a diploma. 2,700 that had the associate's degree, and a little over 10,000 with a bachelor's degree or higher. This is by the time they're 25. And then on the right side, you can see what that median salary is. And this is what got me 3-4 years ago when we started this, is that think about where you were at the age of 25. You may or may have not had a significant other. You may or may not have had children or a child at that time. But to think about this median salary and where you were at 25 and where families are today and the cost of things is very compelling to me. So of course I immediately took this and I put it side by side to the old one, because I needed to know, had we made any progress even in that 3 years time? Because we did a whole lot. Kentucky, when I say we, I mean Kentucky did a whole lot between 2012 and 2015. Dual credit ramped up. Career pathways were elevated. Scholarships were introduced. That was very early introduction. Just the whole focus in Kentucky's education system around college and career. CCR became a thing, right? Like it was the thing then. And so I wanted to know if it makes a difference. And Robin put it in the chat, so we may not see you guys the rest of the meeting and we have totally lost your focus. But it is fascinating because there's some good outcomes. So for the all, just to give you a very quick snippet and wet the palate so you can go out afterwards and go, oh my gosh, we got to talk about this. So if you look at 2012 and to compare to 2015, this is just a snapshot of all, and this is percentages because the numbers, there's actually less graduates in 2015 than there were in 2012. So high school graduates. So in 2012, we had about 22% who had earned bachelor's or greater. In 2015, it was 23.4. So in 3 years difference, it was a little bit more. But I have some better stuff to share with you. In associate's degree in 2012, it was 5.7%. 3 years later, it was 6.13% had associate's degrees. Certifications were the exact same, a little over 3%. Some college, which we had talked about 4 years ago, that is this a concern? Because do they have college in debt without a degree or a certification? And this was very early with dual credit. This is before dual credit exploded in Kentucky. And we were concerned about that. I think there's new things to think about with this data, but it went from 43.6% down to 41%. So you had some gains with degree attainment, whether it's associates or bachelor's plus. But then the other side, which is really interesting, and I think we can have a conversation about this, is in 2012, 24.9% who had a high school diploma only bumped up just a hair to 25.8%. So we start to see a little bit of a divide on where the students are going. And so that's a snapshot. But I want to bring to your attention some just real brief gains. And I won't read all the numbers because that would bore you to tears, and I won't do that. And we don't have all day. But when I look at male versus female, females went up in bachelor's. So females went up in bachelor's. They went up in associate degrees. They went down in certifications, stayed about the same with some college credit, but they dropped in high school only. So their movement actually went in the right direction, just in 3 years' time. For males, it was a little bit different. We've talked about males. We've talked a lot about concerns of our young men and those who pursue any type of post-secondary education, credentials, as well as workforce. And so for males, it had a very tiny movement in bachelor's degrees, very small movement, less than 0.5% in associates. They went up in certificates earned. They dropped in some college. They dropped from 45.5% to 40.7%. But we increased a lot in the males from 28.8% to a little over 32% with high school only. And this kind of fits into the narrative of the conversation we had about the students, the males who have taken advantage of early post-secondary opportunities, career pathways, earned credentials. It's a really interesting conversation that I think is warranted. For our African-American students, we went up in bachelor's, up in associates. We stayed about the same with certificates. We dropped. Oh, sorry. I'm speeding along, Robin. I apologize. I love this stuff. Dropped with some college. We had a little bit less. And then with high school diploma only, we went up a little over a percentage point for our African-American students. For our Hispanic students, it's really interesting. Or Latinx students. We had a significant, I think it's, I don't know if it's statistically significant. I can let KY Stats tell me that. But in 2012, it was 14% bachelor's or higher. But in 2015, it's about 17.9%. It's a big jump. That's a big, in 3 years. Associates went up from 4.9 to 5.4. Certificates went down just a hair. Some college went down. And high school only went from 33% down to 31%. So we're moving that population of students up. It's a smaller population, but it's still moving in the right direction. And then free and reduced lunch is always a challenge because that's a majority of our state. It's a very big challenge culturally and access to things. We talk about this a lot at all levels, from our earliest learners, our preschool students and younger, our early childhood, our child care. This is what the Lieutenant Governor is talking about, of even exposure to early care all the way up. We always face this as the greatest challenge in our state, is that bachelor's did go up, Associates went up. Certificates went down just a hair. Some college dropped from 50% to 44.3. So we lost some to actually earning degrees and not just having some college. However, there was a pretty good jump with high school diploma only. It went from 31.6% to about 35%. So again, we have some work to do with our socioeconomic challenged children, our students. So that's just a snippet. And I encourage you to look at both. And I will, when we do a follow-up, we'll send both of those reports. And you can look on the KY Stats does a phenomenal job with the technical notes. So they define exactly what they mean by every one of those things. And I would highly recommend reading those so you know what you're measuring. The one thing that blew my mind, because we have done so much work on this continuum around early post-secondary opportunities, dual credit specifically, but early post-secondary opportunities is AP, IB, Cambridge, and dual credit. And what I compared is the all with bachelor's compared, and Robbie, you don't have to share this. I'm just going to share some quick things. But from just all students, just as students who had an early post-secondary opportunity, not even guaranteed to pass, but they were enrolled is what the definition was, enrolled in a post-secondary. And it went from, and bachelor's degrees, 23.4% was the all for the 2015 graduates. But if they had an early post-secondary opportunity, 36% have earned a bachelor's or better. That's huge, you guys. Just an opportunity for students to be exposed to rigorous coursework and have the opportunity to engage in that, whatever method it may be. It all went up. Associates went from 6.13%, which is the all. If you had any early post-secondary opportunity enrollment, you were at 7.8% with an associate's degree earned. Certificates went up just a hair, a little over a tenth of a percentage point. Some college, obviously, that increased a little bit, went from 41 to 42.8%. But here's the kicker. This is what I love. Majority of these kids earn credit, college credit, because all the students, 25.8%, had high school diploma only, and 9.5%, if they had any early post-secondary opportunity, were at the high school diploma only, which tells you that the majority of these students passed the early post-secondary opportunities that they had. That's a game changer. And so that's just at a quick glance. I got all kinds of Post-it notes. I can tell you dual credit blew it out of the water. Dual credit jumps up from 23.4% for all. If they had dual credit, and the definition that KY Stats had is if you passed at least one dual credit class. Many kids have many more than that, but at least passing one. Bachelor or more attainment went from 23.4, which is all, to 38.9% of bachelor's or above. Y'all, we are making a difference. Like, this is the important stuff. And so it goes on, and I nerd out about all this, and I will not take any more time. But I highly encourage you to look at this and know why this continuum matters, because the campuses don't offer dual credit by themselves, right? It's the partnership we have. And it's the high schools and the middle schools that expose these students and say, have you ever considered? And it's KIA that makes it possible for our keys and our work ready and our dual credit scholarships to remove burdens. It is so many pieces and parts of this entire continuum that work together. It's our General Assembly who funds so much of this. And I know Becky Gilpatrick has shared this, has shared the jump in numbers just by giving students the opportunity to take more. I mean, it really is impacting, it's impacting completion, it's impacting success. I encourage you also to look at if students even have some dual credit, some college, like with dual credit where they've earned it, look at what their median salary is, even if they're still at that high school with some credit. Maybe they just haven't finished what they started, but their median salary is much higher than that without any. So it's being honored, it's being seen. And so I just want that to set our stage for today. And I encourage you to look at that, hopefully not right now, but look at that. We will send you both reports just so it's easily accessible. If you have any questions, I know Matt and his team can answer that, but they have done, this is the most compelling report, I think, because it gives you the grace of life. And it doesn't force you into a pathway everybody wants you to be in, but it's just life. And the fact that we are still showing gains, even 3 years in a very short amount of time, there's differences being made. And we're just getting started. So I want to thank you for that. And I want you to encourage it, because that also pushes into family and culture and what is possible for people who didn't think were possible. And we got a lot of work to do, but it's opening doors and removing barriers. So I just want that to be our stage for today, before we get started, and really keep that as a focus and think about that as we move forward. So Robin's going to share the screen. As you all know, we looked at the original mission. We had a vision that we had created, and then we had no mission, and I know better than that. So I just want to share with you, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Robert. He's just going to give a brief overview of the small ad hoc team that came together and just some of the changes that took place. And any questions or additional suggestions you all may have, we'll put it in an email, so you can email those to me if there's something that it gives you heartburn. But Robert, I'm going to turn it to you to briefly go through each one.
Okay. Yeah, and I will be concise. A small group of us convened on December 15th to take some of the language that had already been generated and had been had put back together in our November meeting. And we just really wanted to go through these statements to make sure that it accurately reflected what it is that we do and where we want to go. And one of the first things, so we had a tiered approach. We went through this line by line. First of all, distinguishing between what should be in the mission, or what describes what it is that we do. And then we also looked at what language belongs more in the vision, or more of the aspirational approach to what it is we do. But in our line by line approach, I will say we had a very intentional and sensitive approach to how the words mattered and what we could convey. We really looked at what is it that we're saying, but what could we also be implying with this? So we really went through that, and we labored with that for a little bit, and we had good feedback. One of the challenges with mission and vision statements in general is you've got to hit that sweet spot of being broad enough really to cover the breadth of your work, but really specific enough to be meaningful and to avoid some of the ambiguity. And that legitimizes a statement. But anyway, our group convened and we had really fruitful discussion, and we truly went through it line by line. And that was our process. So how's that for concise?
Perfect. And then is there anything you wanted to add to the vision on any of that, or are you?
Oh, no, I was sort of covering both. There were elements that got moved from one to the other. We were just making sure that the fit was accurate.
Awesome. So if you can see, thank you, Robert, so much. And it was, just so you know, it was Robert and Jim and Corinne Murphy and Dallas Kratzer that willingly came online with us and really dug into the language. So we exist to remove barriers throughout the system to ensure students can access a seamless P20 education journey. The Continuum supports actions that lead to Kentuckians earning the necessary degrees and credentials to succeed in the workforce, elevate our communities, and increase economic opportunities. And that is based on a lot of your all's feedback and some words that you all felt really passionate about. And then this is how we were going to do this, because we know that there are things we have influence on and things that we can do and other things that are out of our purview, but these are definitely ones: convening cross-sector partners, monitoring, reporting progress, identifying, advocating for policy solutions, and accelerating action. So, and then the vision, which Robert talked about, kind of swapping some language back and forth. This is how we want people to talk about us. Champions, so the Continuum champions an agile education system that serves Kentuckians from cradle to career. We aspire to be the most seamless education system in the nation, where Kentuckians have access and opportunity to earn quality degrees and credentials that lead to prosperous careers and fulfilling lives. And that is very broad. I hope you see that as the different credentials and degrees. There's lots of options there. And so if you have any specific feedback, we will share this slide deck, of course. Robin's put our emails in the chat, and you are welcome to send us your thoughts. So, okay, so we are going to move into the focus areas that you all helped us narrow down. And Robin, if you can share that. Okay, so as you can see, so the folks who had voted to help us kind of narrow down and prioritize the areas, what we looked at is priorities that were 1 and 2, which number 1 and 2 were your highest priorities, 5 was your least priority. So we were looking at who would really prioritize at the 1s and 2s, but if there were a ton of if there were several votes at the 5, then and it kind of canceled itself out, we kind of considered that as well. And so we try to really think through each one of those, to be honest. So I want to go through these really briefly. We're going to have some time to think about it. And so as we are thinking about these priorities for the upcoming year, you heard all 3 co-leads. There's so many directions we can go, and these are the areas that you all seem to lean into most. And it is not fleshed out with the exact deliverables. That's the next step. But is this the area where you want us to go? So affordability of post-secondary education, that's talking about scholarships, earn and learn, FAFSA support, any ways around the affordability piece. You heard Dr. Thompson share, we are making gains on reducing student debt, but we know things are still expensive and can often be a barrier. So that's one area. Expansion of college going perception. This is specific to non-traditional students in post-secondary options. And so do people fit? Do they see where they fit if they're your non-traditional students? This was talked about in adult learners as well, military. And so that's what this is pertaining to. And we'll talk more about this in the breakout group. So I don't want you to think that I'm blowing through these. I just want to make sure you guys know what the context was. And if I get any of these wrong, you guys jump in and tell me I'm wrong. Early childhood system workforce. A big conversation was had, as the Lieutenant Governor talked about, is increasing centers, and not just any centers, but the quality of our center. We want our students, our children to have quality care, but part of that is our workforce needs. And I know Lynn being on the call for the GOEC, I'm very grateful for that. And I know that that is a focus area for them too, is you got to have workers who are well compensated. It is a very competitive field and a hard job for what many of them get paid. And so this is a topic that was brought up as a consideration to dig into. High quality childcare and early learning, just overall, what does this look like? What does the system look like? This could go lots of different directions, and there's some efforts already being made in different areas around just where the needs are, where we could strengthen the different components of our early childhood system, and high quality childcare. What does that look like? A P20 competency framework. So there's a lot of efforts around your essential skills. I know that the Chamber helped champion the essential skills legislation a few years ago. That was then taken in, and standards were created at KDE that align the essential skills to K-12 standards alignment. Which is fantastic. We were listening to employers. There is now the it's actually Portrait of a Learner, not a graduate. Got that one wrong. I didn't see that. But Portrait of a Learner that KDE has worked on with competencies that are being developed with their communities and their within their schools to identify those needs, but a lot of overlap of those essential skills and the competencies needed to succeed. That's in the process. And then at the post-secondary, we have the graduate profile, doing something very similar, working on competencies and essential skills and dispositions to best prepare our college graduates as they enter the workforce. So this was talking about really combining that into a true competency framework continuum, no pun intended, but kind of early childhood has very similar self-help skills and social skills and things that are very similar that feed into all these things. And so talking about how we can create something that nobody else literally has created at a state level. So great potential there. K-12 college and career instruction and counseling / advising. This is a huge passion point for this group and desperately needed. And we are working every day around this advising piece and getting families and students the help they need, and really learning about the different resources that are already in the state, but stronger alignment and stronger support around this. But this was a big one for you guys. Collaboration of employers and educators regarding the workforce and career exploration. So there was a lot of conversation around, and when we were able to meet with some of our workforce friends who weren't able to stay for the November meeting, this was a big component of their work and their strategic action as well, of really working with educators and employers to build out a stronger pipeline and seek out career options and opportunities. We've talked a lot about this in or late elementary, middle school. It's never too early to start talking about what you want to be when you grow up, or things you're good at, things that are options. And then as that matures over time, and then really having those partnerships to really see what's available and help students set some real goals. Obviously, the K-12 certified and classified workforce goes along with the early childhood workforce. We have desperate need. You will have heard the conversations today from our co-leads, and the good fight. If you are not good fight, I would say the good advocacy and voice around supporting increased salary, but not just that, but also improved climate and culture in our schools. It's a hard job, and not everybody is made to do it, but those who do sometimes don't want to anymore. And so there's a lot of folks working in the state to really elevate the field, not only for recruitment, but retention. We are grateful, if you haven't seen the budget, just to see there are two things that is proposed in the draft. Is the student teacher stipend was proposed. We have talked about that here before. And also a debt or a loan forgiveness for teachers is a pilot proposal. I don't know much about that, but I'm grateful to see it. I was hopeful to see K-TIP money in there to support the new teachers, whether they are alt-cert or traditionally certified. That's a job that everybody needs a mentor to get started. And so we'll see what happens, but definitely the workforce is a huge concern for this group. And then the pipeline of untapped talent and good jobs as defined by the KWIB's 8 principles. This was also shared in our workforce piece. And so Debbie, you may have to help me with this. I know we talked about this with untapped talent. Can you please fill in where I could not find my notes on this part, and I apologize.
Sure. This is
Thank
Debbie
you.
Dennison with the KWIB, and it's actually the Department of Labor and the
Okay.
Department of Commerce. They came out with good job principles, and I can put the 8 and the link in the chat. But basically, it's focused around equity. It's focused around everything that you've been talking about, Amanda, and lifting people up and removing those barriers and really getting employers to engage in these 8 principles to move this forward. So I'll pop that information in the
Perfect.
chat, and you guys can view that later.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I have way too many notes on all these things. That was the one I could not find. So thank you.
Understand.
So what we're going to do is we're going to show you this again. Don't worry. But we've been working with ESG, and really after your feedback from November, how are we much more strategic and make sure that we have some influence on these things? The folks who had shared from the Continuum before says, we want to show more action. We want to measure, and it doesn't have to be big A accountability, but we want to be accountable for our success. Like, are we seeing movement? Do we have any locus of control on this? And is it duplicative, or can we help elevate where somebody else is already doing it? And so what we're going to do is we're going to break out in groups. We're going to look at those 9. And the first thing is going to ask if it aligns with our mission and vision. And some of these are very broad. We don't have the exact deliverables, what this would look like. And we would flesh that out once we prioritize and formulate the work groups. But it's something to think about. Is it really aligned to what we believe and what we're trying to accomplish? Is it within the CEC's locus of control? And these are some questions to consider. Does it lead to legislative policy change? Does it lead to changes in an agency program or policy? Does it lead to funding for P20 success initiatives? Promote coherence and collaboration across our spectrum, our P20 spectrum? And does it improve public education? And so they don't have to all have yeses. But if you're thinking about this and you're going, no, not really, not really, not really. It's not that it's a bad idea. It just may not be the best selection for the continuum. And then the last thing is, to what extent will this priority duplicate efforts of other priorities, current or past. And most of the topics that we have in there are pretty fresh, but there are a couple that we've worked on in the past. So it's something to discuss. So what we're going to do is we're going to break out in small groups. We'll have some time. We're going to talk through those priorities as it relates to that first question. And that question one with all those components is one piece of the decision matrix that we are using to really narrow down and be strategic and identify the action. The rest of those pieces will actually work through the work groups. So they can deliver to you proposed deliverables and timelines and how's this going to impact people. But number one is really how we need the continuum themselves to help us set the stage of how we move forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to break out in a group. And then Robin and I will facilitate that to have real discussion around these, clarification, and then start walking through that rubric. Everybody with me on that? So you will be, okay, you'll be teleported to a group and you won't be forced to speak, but I would highly encourage it. So, all right, Robin or Joette.
Amanda.
Oh, I had just dropped in the chat. I have to do a presentation regarding CTE funding at the national level, so I'm really excited about that, but I'm going to have to jump off. So thank you all so much, and I'm sorry I can't stay to participate.
Okay. Beth, I know you probably have to go, don't you?
Thank
Okay.
you. Good seeing you all.
You as well. Okay. Now I will quit talking. I've done all this talking today and I apologize. I get a little excited about this stuff, y'all. It's good. So what I want to do is, I believe it was in our chat. But I'm just going to pull it over. It'll be easier. These are I'm going to put in the chat what what we're going to kind of revolve our. Are you all able to see that? Okay, great. And then I'm going to pull up on the, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can actually see the priorities. And we'll go from there. Okay, I'm sorry about this, guys. Just a second. Okay. Are you all able to see the PowerPoint? Okay. I'm going to put it in slideshow so it's even bigger. Able to see that? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So what I want to do is first of all, is there any questions you all have about what these are, what they mean, or anything that's unclear? Anything? Seems clear as mud.
Clear as mud.
Awesome. Okay. So if you look at the document I put in the chat, is there any of these that you feel like, or you question, or let's have discussion about, that don't align with our mission or vision? Is there anything that you feel like it's a little out of scope? None of these are bad. I think all of these are solid topics. I'm not surprised what surfaced. But is there anything you feel like maybe something to consider or clarify a little more? Any of them?
Amanda, is someone responding? It sounds like someone, I can hear someone in the background.
Yeah, I think I got it. Is that better? Because I also hear Robin right behind me in the paper thin wall in our office. So that could be too. So no issues with mission or vision on any of these? Okay, so let's kind of go through some of these. Lynn, just gonna ask you, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but or Susan or anybody, looking at the couple that really elevated or surfaced with the high quality childcare and early learning and the workforce, is there anything that you want to share with the group about maybe just really briefly what the GOEC may be working on, or something that you would say, this is probably more doable than others, or depending on, those questions that I put in the chat around leading to change?
Yeah, we are full force ahead on early childhood system workforce. That is a huge component of our preschool development grant. We have a 3-year, $36 million preschool development grant, and that's been a huge component. We've been working with the chamber on a talent pipeline management collaborative, and that collaborative meets periodically. We have 3 different groups with each of the early childhood sectors represented. And we've been looking at some projection data on staffing, recruitment, what types of positions are needed, what kind of turnover, and that sort of thing. So that's a huge component. And then the high quality childcare and early learning is a huge component of what we do. Obviously, we're working with KDE on some upcoming grant opportunities for expansion of high quality all day opportunities for families. And so these fit very, very well and very closely with the mission and goal of our office.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Any questions for Lynn? I don't want to jump in if you have any clarifying questions.
I'm curious, we talk about learn and earn, if there's a component within your planning. I know in the House budget, they eliminated the early childhood, or they didn't fund the early childhood development scholarship, but is there a component of your planning that would allow pathways into post-secondary while they're doing that workforce activity?
Yeah, I didn't touch on Our apprenticeship program, but we have a portfolio for 3 different occupations, an educator, a director, and then we have some opportunities for para-educators within that realm. And so that apprenticeship comes along with incentives. So it incentivizes continuation of that. And then we're also working with some micro-credential opportunities through the Division of Childcare, where there's some badging that's happening alongside of training and on the job learning. So those are 2 big components that fit within our workforce as well. And then we also are supporting some of those scholarship opportunities coming up. They were funded with ARPA funding. And so part of the goal as we were working on our preschool development grant was to make sure that we were paying attention to the scholarship opportunities that are available as well and sustaining that.
So you have a plan, even if it doesn't get funded, for that scholarship piece, at least in the immediate future? Oh, you're muted, Lynn.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. We've been working alongside Kia and having those conversations about supporting scholarship, especially sustaining that, even before this section, we were already focused in on sustaining those ARPA dollars that are going away. So we wanted to make sure that was part of our plan. So there is a plan. The robustness might be a little bit different. It just kind of depends on where those fall, but there is a plan. Absolutely.
Got it. Thank you. Anything else for Lynn? Good questions. Diana, can I roll into you with the affordability of post-secondary education? Everybody's always so enamored with that, with the scholarships and Earn and Learn and FAFSA and just the CCAP and the KTG. I mean, we have a lot of support in Kentucky, but a lot of needs. So is there anything you would want to share just to keep people abreast of this, or anything you have any pause on that may get in the way or help you elevate things? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, thought
That's
I'd unmuted. Yes, as I'm sure everybody's aware, we were able to increase the CAP grant to the level that it fully funded the tuition and fees at all public universities, but for University of Kentucky lacked a couple $100. So we're very happy that we were able to do that. And looking at the budget, we've been scrutinizing what's in the budget right now, and we hope to be able. With the change in the FAFSA, we think that there'll be more Pell eligible people and therefore more demand for CAP. And so we hope to still have a sufficient appropriation to still continue to fully fund CAP as we have. As you've noted, there was a couple of lacking funding in a couple of our scholarships that we're working on, such as the early childhood scholarship. So we're concerned about that one. We have our eye on that one, working on that one, as well as a couple of the other ones. Yeah, we've been working diligently on FAFSA, trying to get the word out about the FAFSA out there with all of our outreach counselors. And so that's been a high priority, I'm sure, for everybody with all the changes to the FAFSA. And the earn and learn, is that anticipated to be during the post-secondary period or secondary, or what is that geared
I
to?
will be honest, I'm not sure who brought this piece up. It was just one of the earn and learn. It was dropped in as just consideration for any type of affordability measure. So Mason, that might be what you were talking about, the learn and earn. Maybe it was just written in backwards. But I think, Diana, that's what it was for. It was just like the other scholarships and support for any kind of affordability measures. So any questions for Diana about affordability or anything with Kia? It's awesome to have everybody on the call at once, like to get clarification on that. Okay. Who do I have on here? Jim. Can I lean in on you for any of the K-12 stuff that you would want to push in on or give clarification? I know you're very familiar with the competency piece and the workforce. It's been a little bit of your job. So
Yeah. That's what I would like to lean in on.
yeah.
And I kind of think it almost, you know, as a 1-2 punch, or a short term and one maybe that's a little longer term.
Yeah.
So obviously we're in almost in a crisis situation as it relates to K-12 or P-12 workforce, both certified, classified, and though there were some really good things in the House budget proposal that you mentioned, some of those already that we're really happy with. The main thing that we need help with is the recurring funding stream that's going to allow us to raise salaries and get those competitive. And so just to kind of put that in a little perspective, in 2007, 2008 fiscal year was probably the best overall funding in our history in kind of K-12 education. But the base, the SEEK base, which is what drives that recurring funding stream that we use to not only pay our people, but also to push resources to the classroom to help student learning. It also drives the disparity between the haves and have-nots, which is all influenced by property values, property wealth. But that base in fiscal year 2008 was $3,822, and $2,503 of those dollars came from the state at that time. And so the local match requirement, there's a local piece in that SEEK formula, was $1,319. But so this current fiscal year, that SEEK base is $4,200. So we've moved from $3,822 to $4,200 in that time span. But the state portion of that is actually less than it was in 2008. It's $1,867, and the local portion is now $2,333 of that base. And that's all a function of how property assessments have changed relative to the SEEK base. And when the SEEK base doesn't keep up with that, with inflation, if you will, then that shift to the local communities occurs, and then you know what happens in property poor communities. They get further and further behind, and then we can't pay our people what they're worth. And what's happened is that we've lost more and more ground in the workforce competition realm, and we've got to make some progress on that. So that's an immediate short-term goal that we need to really work on. And so we're asking them to get us back to more of a 2008 buying power equivalency, which that seat base would need to be around $5,400 total, including transportation and everything, to get us there. And then from a longer term standpoint, and thinking about how can we align the policy landscape to create the kinds of systems that are going to produce outcomes we want. And so in that P20 competency framework work, when you read things about portrait of a graduate or portrait of a learner, graduate profile, those essential skills for life and the workforce, work-ready skills, are so critical. And so there's a bunch of work going on of how do we create a system that provides education that's personalized to students, that fosters innovation. Even if you think about choice options, the most choice is practiced within a school in terms of what is offered that's meaningful and useful to me and as a student. And so thinking about how do we create a competency framework from start to finish that gives children and young adult learners a pathway built around their talent, skills, dispositions, and aspirations. And there's some really wonderful work going on in the Kentucky United We Learn Council that I think is a beautiful opportunity for us to collaborate, to help create the policy landscape that will produce those kinds of systems that will give us the outcomes that we want, and thinking about creating an accountability system around that's meaningful and useful to the first users of our education, and that's the students within it. And so I think there's a great opportunity for that, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. But thanks, Amanda, and everyone for a little time to step on those.
Absolutely. Any questions for Jim on any of those? So higher ed, let's jump in with you guys. There are a few of you online, and Heather, definitely as an advisor or counselor, you can probably weigh in. You're kind of in that all the areas. So but I want us to think about the college and career advising. Think about that. I know some of you guys are in that role, and even the expansion of college going perception with non-traditional students. I'd love to hear your all's thoughts on that. What comes to mind? Is it aligned to some of these things we could have locus of control on? When I say locus of control, it's could we have influence on those policy changes, on advocating for funding, getting change? What's your thoughts on those? And be very honest. This is how it's going to help us make informed decisions or you guys will make informed decisions on where we place our priority in our time. Anyone?
Well, I can chime in. I know one thing as far as the funding issue. I know our school counselor association, we're meeting with legislators, and we're already in communication with them about completely funding the School and Safety Resilience Act, which would get the ratios down to 1 to 250 for providers, and ensure our students are being seen for direct services. And so that's going to directly impact the college and career instruction and counseling and advising, to allow our counselors to see kids, because right now they are struggling to see any students for anything, not just mental health, but also for career advising, college options, which also impacts those options we're offering our students for those non-traditional pathways and what that might look like in our schools. So all of it's a domino effect within our districts right now. So I know for us, we are advocating very heavily right now of what our counselors are doing and their roles within the state, and hopefully gaining more funding. So
awesome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I hope that domino effect happens. We need it. We need it. What about the other higher ed topics? Higher ed people?
I might actually jump in a little bit and echo some of that about the necessity to increase the bandwidth for high school guidance counseling, because you see students often struggle with the transition to higher ed even getting an understanding of what an academic advisor's role is. We sometimes will say it's sort of like a guidance counselor, but it's different in these ways. But what we're finding to be true, and this has been the case for a long time, is that I think the capacity of high school guidance counselors has been diminished because other administrative tasks have been put on them for so long. So it would be nice if there was some continuity between how we advise and counsel folks at these different levels, so that the students aren't trying to deal with yet learning another system or dealing with possibly another form of culture shock. But I oversee a few advising units, and historically, it's part of what we've had to do is re-educate on what even that role is, because students they don't always have access to those advising or counseling resources prior to their higher ed experience.
Good. Anything else? That's very helpful. Anything else on the college going perception, or Mason, anything that sticks out to you, or Ashley?
I mean, I think this emphasis on counselors and shifting towards a college going culture, I mean, across the spectrum, I think that the less time they have to spend with those students in the guiding towards career and college, I mean, we're seeing it, especially those male students,
Yes.
not showing up in post-secondary at all. So
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's a good point. I think we're getting ready to be teleported.
Yeah, I was afraid they were going to shoot me out of here as I was mid-sentence.
I know, talk as fast as possible. No, I hope this is helpful, because we're going to go back and you will pick your priorities out of this matrix of 9. And so my hope is that you were able to hear some insight also to some work that's already going on, or great momentum, or maybe it's something that's a struggle. So we can do, kind of have informed decisions of where we can go, and have work groups dig deeper into things or know more about. So. Oh, am I losing people now? Okay, I think we've all been teleported back.
Hey, Amanda.
Yes.
Penny was right in the middle of a comment when we got cut off. Can we let her have the floor for 30?
Of course, Penny, that's happened twice today. You go, girl. Go ahead.
I'm very popular. Okay, so no, it was addressing the first line of the mission in terms of removing barriers and having access. Okay, so 2 things, barriers and access, right? And the topic I was discussing was affordability of post-secondary education. No matter how hard we don't want to admit it, those barriers are systemic, and telling families, yes, there's a way to pay for school is not enough. So when we look at what we're supposed to do and look at our charge, and we want to value that mission, I'd like to see something with teeth to ensure that those barriers are removed, and we can do more than lip service and say, hey, there are ways to get your kid into school. Why don't you go out and get $50,000 worth of loans that you can't pay back ever until you're 90?
Good. Well, hopefully your all's conversation was helpful and insightful. We really appreciated really, Penny, to your comment, just being able to discuss some of the challenges with each of these 9 topics. We know that they're huge. We really will have to narrow down, but I think it was very helpful to hear about progress that folks are working on, bumps in the road, advocacy, what they're advocating for. I'll share one of them that sticks out. There was a lot of good conversation that I took a lot of notes about, and I thought I had a pretty good handle on things, and I always realize I don't. Is that one of the things, Heather, I'm going to share what you had shared, is that the talking about advisors, right, and providing high school kids with more support overall, is that the Counselors Association is advocating for funding to actually fund Senate Bill 1, the resiliency. What is it called, Heather?
It's the School and Safety Resilience Act.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to get the title correct. And what we talked about is if it is funded and if there are staff that can fill some of those roles to help meet the needs of students, because there's lots of capacities around and needs in counseling, obviously, then it's a domino effect that provides more opportunities for counselors to provide advising, because then you would have additional support to address the mental and the academic needs of our students. In a perfect world, nothing's perfect, but we talked about the impact of that and what each were sharing. Diana had shared about Kia and working around the scholarships, and early childhood's doing a lot of work. K-12 is promoting things. So there's a lot of moving parts around here, and it impacts all of us. I don't know, Robin, if you just wanted to bring up any highlights that stuck out for your group, and then we'll move into the voting piece. But
Yeah, absolutely. We had a great conversation also, Amanda. Let's see here. I wrote down quite a few notes about some of the big takeaways. Robin Kinney mentioned about how there are certain ones of these that will help us get other ones right. She was talking specifically about the P20 framework, but how that, getting one of them right helps support getting others right, and making progress. Debbie Dennison also pointed out that there is kind of a workforce element in all of these, or in many of these, even if they don't specifically call out the workforce, which I think is so true and representative of the collaborative nature of the work that we do. The K-12 workforce, educator workforce, was a really big topic of conversation, and about how we're talking about not just the educators, but we're also talking about all the other people who work in education systems across Kentucky, and how just as a sector of employers, that it does, our school systems employ a lot of people who aren't necessarily teachers, but it takes so many people to keep schools going. And so, it kind of is it's a workforce issue as well as an education issue. It's one of those places where those intersect. Long conversation also about affordability, a lot of interest in that, and how communication, it also overlaps with advising and counseling, and how getting students and families more aware of opportunities earlier helps them take advantage. To Penny's point, you can't just wait until somebody is ready to go to college and then say, oh, how about you do this? They need to have a plan and a belief from an early age that it's possible. So really great conversations. And I think we all agreed that we could be happy with just about, we didn't say this, but I think we could be happy with just about anything we pick off this list. It's a good list.
it is. I appreciate the conversation. So at this time, Robin's going to put up on the screen the priorities, or wait a minute, I'll see what the slide is. I'm looking at my slide. Yes. So so if you see on your screen, you're going to see the survey. You can do the QR code, or you can actually, I think we have the link as well. Is that right, Robin? Yes. So Robin put the Survey Monkey link in your chat. You can click on that, or if you're using your phone and you want to use a QR code, you're going to pick your top 3. We're going to give you a couple minutes or 2 or 3 minutes to do this so you don't feel rushed. But if you can just pick your top 3 priorities, that will help us narrow down, and we'll be able to move forward and flesh out the ideas and deliverables and things to get approval from you. So I'll stop talking so you guys can complete that. Okay, we're still taking a few more in, and actually, what we're gonna do is follow back up while you guys are finishing up your votes, and we'll have Robin share that in just a few minutes. But last time when we met in November, you all had asked, we had a great conversation because you said we were really not measuring our success. We can talk about it anecdotally, but are we making progress? Are we really showing that if we work together, things are moving, and what does that look like? And so we took that back to our data team. Just so you know, our data team is made up of CPE, KDE, KY Stats, of course, and KCTCS. And so they're just a great group to convene and go, do we have that? Is it available? Is it something that has to be created? What can we do? And so I'm just going to turn it to Matt to briefly give us just a heads up of where we are, some ideas that have been considered, so you all can see that we are following up with that. And if you have feedback for Matt, we would definitely want to hear that, because we'll have our follow-up meeting to our data team, because we do want this to become a part of how we function. So Matt, I'm going to mute and turn it to you.
Sure. Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everybody. Just in case there are folks on the call I haven't met, I'm Matt Berry, Executive Director at KY Stats. As Amanda said, our data team is Dee Dee Connor from KDE, Alicia Crouch from KCTCS, and Travis Muncie from CPE. Amanda and Robin and our colleagues at Strategy Group have to sit in meetings with us and listen to a bunch of data folks tell them why the things they're asking us can't be measured, and it's not exactly the right word to use, and why we don't have perfect access. So thank you two for doing that. But to Amanda's point, excuse me, we have been working kind of not struggling, but grappling with the question of that. I know since I've joined the group, this group, excuse me, how do we measure success, and how do we measure that sort of along this continuum, being that this is a group organized around the principle of a continuum. So I raised my hand a couple of meetings ago and said that I thought that KY Stats could be helpful in organizing data across the continuum. You all, I think most of the folks on here hopefully or probably use our products on a consistent basis. We do a lot of dashboards. It's not the only thing we do, but it's a really, I think, effective way to organize a lot of data in one place in a user-friendly way. And so what I suggested is that I would be more than happy to find capacity on our team to create a dashboard for this group, for the CEC. Just around what Amanda sort of pitched, which is how do we measure progress? So a couple of I don't want to get down, I really won't get down into the nitty-gritty details of how we're considering how we might do that, but the data team has begun kind of organizing. We've done a couple of things. One is we've started to ask, how would you organize something like that? Because as you can imagine, something like this could get really unwieldy very quickly. I think if you think back to the beginning of this meeting, even our chairs really, in their comments, I think our co-chairs really, I think, rattled off a lot of the things that we've discussed along the continuum, all the things that this group has been focused on. So we've really kind of tried to organize our thinking around what would a dashboard look like in a sort of big buckets to start. And, those aren't going to be any surprise to you, but let me just list them so that you all can see where we're headed. And if there's any red flags or questions, please throw your hand up and tell us. But and I should say, last sort of caveat, under each of these, what we're doing is we're sort of discussing what data are available, what data might be most relevant, how do we measure those currently? If we're not measuring those currently, how could we access that? And then we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of how would you put it together in a place and timing and blah, blah, all the details, right? So we're looking at early childhood as a big bucket, high school transitions, early post-secondary opportunities, post-secondary transitions, first-year college success, educator workforce, K-12, post-secondary attainment, adult learners, and workforce. So I'll just say right up front, I'm aware that, again, those are big, broad buckets. What we're trying to do is what we are not trying to accomplish is to put every measurement pertaining to, for example, adult learners under that bucket. What we're trying to do, I think, is identify what are some key indicators under that bucket that might matter to this group to assess and evaluate on an ongoing basis. And so that's one key thing I want to mention that we're trying to do a little bit differently. Excuse me. You all know, as experts in your areas and in using data to inform the work you do, that most of the data in these areas, particularly in education, we all know has a pretty significant lag to it. You know, as hard as we try, if we're going to measure things over time, we have to let that time occur. And so everything is going to take more time. And then we have the time that our systems require. So we have to collect the data, we have to clean the data, then we have to ship it over to KY Stats, and then we do things with it. We integrate it into our system. We go through our review processes and our checks, so more time occurs. So one of the things that we're doing is asking whether or not there are ways we can share data differently or on a more proactive basis around some of these metrics that would make this more real time. It's never going to be real time. I think we should just say that right up front. I think probably no one here expects it to be, but I just want to put that out there that it won't be real time. But we're at least, I think going through the effort to identify how close to that can we get under each of these buckets, and then it's going to differ across that continuum. But that's sort of the process. So right now that's more of a process update, but we did just want to share with you all that that's the road we're going down. And then I guess, Amanda, I'm not sure how much time you have built into the agenda for this. I might have already gone past your time. I'm sorry, but I think I would love to hear if there are any red flags that people are mentioning or are feeling, or if you all have any feedback or suggestions.
I will bring to your attention, Matt. Jenny had put in the chat transfers.
Okay.
She said transfers ? And if you said it, I missed it. So I don't know if you had mentioned the transfers or not.
I did not mention transfers, Jenny. But I actually don't recall off the top of my head if we have transfers identified in here, but that could be a good flag for us to consider, and certainly within our capability right now, as you know, Jenny. But that's a really good idea.
It's a significant population.
Right.
And most of our college graduates have transferred, right? They're transfer students at one point in time, either from a community college or they have gone to multiple institutions. And
yeah,
how we all work together to have coursework count as life takes them from one place to another is critical in college completion success.
And then, Jenny, that's such a good it's a good way for me to give an example of when I'm talking about all of the things that can go under each of these buckets. So transfers is something I don't think we had discussed. And Robin and Amanda, if I missed a meeting, we did. I'm sorry, but I don't think we had discussed that. I think it falls within one or two of these broad buckets that we've identified. But then even underneath transfers, there's a lot we could discuss. You can look at upward transfer, reverse transfer, swirl, all the things that we know really matter or can matter. So I think that's going to, when we get down to that level, I hope that we can have more particular conversations about what exactly we want to be measuring.
Hey, Matt, what about supports that people receive? So we talked about barriers in our conversation earlier, and if somebody's receiving supports from the state, can that be linked to then how much education they receive?
Yeah, that's a great question, Debbie. So we have not talked about, so yes, from the data perspective, we can link those things. We have not talked about that as a particular focus for this dashboard. I think what we're trying to do is strike a balance between being informative and being a little closer to real time, and then not go, I think, to be candid and from the KY Stats perspective, I think sometimes we have fallen into the trap of including everything we have access to, and then it becomes so overwhelming that it almost becomes counterproductive. So we want to try to strike a balance of information, but stay informative. So, but I will say this, we're working with Lily Massey-McKinley's team at the Success Collaborative Initiative, Collaborative, on building a dashboard that does focus on students who receive benefits. And so that could sort of be a supplement, because that's going to be some ongoing work anyway. So I think that could probably fold in here. I don't know that it would go into the dashboard that we're talking about, but it certainly could be available at some point.
That actually segues beautifully into a question. I want to piggyback on that. When we talk about services, how far down, and I know we're just beginning this process, how far down could we dig in terms of students? If we're looking at progress, say we wanted to track number of students who managed to successfully go through a 4-year program. We have buckets of kids. We have our kids with special needs. We have kids who come through DJJ, right? How far down could we dig if we wanted to track and see how successful an initiative was in bringing the DJJ babies into a program and they were successful?
So another really great question. And my answer is going to be bad, but it kind of depends. It depends on what we want to
Oh,
do.
I'm used to that. It's fine.
Well, the only reason I say that is because we can, so think about the life outcomes report that Amanda was showing, and I think that we put the link in the chat. So if you look at that more closely, we have a drop-down list of probably close to 20 different populations of individuals that we can measure, and there's more that we can do. Again, it becomes a question of, if you're going to include metrics along this continuum, do we want it just to be an overview dashboard where we can just see the big kind of leading highlight indicators? Or do we want it to be more so that we do that and focus on some of these populations that we think matter? It can be both. I just think it becomes maybe a different project at that point. It's just about prioritizing what it is we want to do. It's not to say one is better than the other. I think it's just what do we want out of that? And I should say, again, I know this is sort of the broad update, so I'm not going to get into the technical. The answer to that question will then affect how frequently it can be updated and in what manner, and how useful it becomes in a rapid cycle. So that kind of thing, I think we should consider too.
Great questions and insight. What else do you guys have to offer? This is helpful for us when we go back into our data team meetings. Okay. Well, stay tuned. We'll be back on this part. But Matt, thank you very much. And thank you to our data team for meeting. It is really helpful. And we know it's quite a gift in this state. So, okay. So, Robin is going to share with you the results, the real-time results of your voting, and let you see where we leaned in on. So clearly affordability is a huge piece here that you are interested in. Our certified and classified workforce, I think that could even really pour in with early childhood all the way up because it's very similar. College and career advising. And then the P20 competency framework are the four that came out ahead for this focus area. And so what we will do, and Robin, I'm sorry, I have you keep shuffling screens. I apologize. What we're going to do is share with you guys some next steps. So we're going to pull together these the ideas and the structure for the work groups based on the topics that you decided. And so what we will need from you, and we will follow up an email, and we're going to keep you more informed more frequently. So I won't be loading up your email box by any means, but I definitely want to be engaging with you to get suggestions on who could be either role groups, considerations for members of the work groups, or expertise, or folks that you say, you know what, we never hear from, and I think it would be really important. So we need that. We don't have preconceived anything. We really want to make sure this is well represented and that we do well. And so what we'll do is we'll use those decision-making chart, the rest of it, to flesh out some draft objectives and timelines. And I'm going to send those out to you guys to put your eyes on it. Say, yeah, I think we're in the right, you're heading in the right direction, or no, I think that's way off. I think you need to look at this. And we're going to get into a little more of the details, but we will get your blessing on that through email, because our next meeting isn't until April. The data needs is that we're going to have to determine, as a great follow-up to Matt's discussion, is around key metrics. So as we have the work group, how will we know if we're being successful? How will we know? And it may be anecdotal, it could be qualitative, but it also quantitative in ways that how we do that, and then work with our data team to think about that and the continuation of this data dashboard that we're trying to come to fruition with your request, and absolutely as we should. And then the CEC, you guys are pivotal on your feedback, your guidance on this, and support. definitely on the ideas as they come to as they start to develop either the product or the recommendation or the communication, whatever that outcome should be. We just really need you. We need your voice. And just like our co-lead said today, we need your voice right now more than ever. And it's not because we're in crisis, it's because we have an opportunity to really be collectively aligned and moving in the right direction. And hearing from each other's world is always very helpful to know where people are, what they're moving towards, barriers that they're addressing. So we know a broader and a more complete picture of the successes and barriers that we are facing. That only makes us wiser and gives us better discernment on how we move forward. So that's kind of our next step. So Robin and I have our work cut out for us to put things together to propose to you all. And we really appreciate that. And then our next meeting is April 17th. So we will send out holds. Joette will send this out. She does a great job of herding the cats, is what I say. Really, that just means Robin and me, or me, because she has to put up with me all the time. But she will send out holds on your calendar. So if you'll notice, April 17th will be virtual. That will almost be the end of session. And it will also be after all the spring breaks, and we will hopefully already have our work groups blessed by you guys and moving along, so you can get updates and we can start to move along, and any additional data updates as well. We'll meet again in August, so it gives us more time to work through our work groups, and then we will come in person in November. And I know that seems like a really long time away, but time moves fast, y'all. So I will make sure you will see the calendar invites from Joette and put a holds on your calendar, and we'll kind of go from there, and hopefully it will work. Other than that, I'm going to stop and see if any of the co-leads have any last comments that they would like to say. I know Aaron had to go and the Lieutenant Governor. Robin, do you have anything, any final words? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but anything you'd like to say?
I was typing frantically in the chat just to thank everyone for the great conversations today and really active participation by everyone. And a big thank you to Amanda and Robin for sort of herding the cats and keeping us all together, moving in the right direction. So thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you guys. You guys make the difference. So you will see a follow-up email from us with the PowerPoint slide deck. You'll see the we'll send both KY Stats data reports, and that will be on that. If you have any technical questions or anything, you will be fantastic. And then you will see the follow-up then a little bit later on proposed outcomes and deliverables, and you're asking your help for membership identification. And you are welcome to serve too, just so you all know. Other than that, we will let you guys go. I want you to know we are giving you back 22 minutes, which never happens for the Continuum. And so I know people are crazy busy and the session has not given us any time to breathe. So I know many of you guys are heading out. Thank you for your time. And if you need anything, please let us know. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank you.